Hello folks, in this video I will tell you about the Modular pipeline library build and test system. As you can see, we are on our demo Jenkins and it has the MPL master project. This project builds the MPL library itself to check the code and run the unit tests. In the job configuration you can see that it's using Jenkinsfile from the MPL repository. So when the build is triggered, it will get the Jenkinsfile and will follow the steps described inside. Now let's check what's happening in the Jenkinsfile of the MPL repository. In the side panel you can see the project folder tree. Here is the content of the MPL project Jenkinsfile. The first line says that we need the MPL Jenkins shared library to build the project. Let's find the required configuration of Jenkins shared libraries. They are stored in the system configuration. As you can see here, we have the shared library named MPL. It is pointing to the local MPL project Git repository that we saw previously. Jenkins shared library is just a source code, so we can use the MPL to build itself. Okay, back to the MPL Jenkins file. The third line of the Jenkins file is a custom step that's described in the MPL. Let's find it in vars directory of the shared library project. The MPLPipeline step describing the default pipeline and its default configuration. Here it overrides the default configuration by provided one and storing it as the pipeline config. The pipeline is described here using a declarative style for better visibility. You can see the stages like checkout, build, deploy, and test. Also by default here is described a number of post steps. Each stage is executing the MPL model step that by default loading model with the current stage name. You can see the stages on the project dashboard when the project is built at least once. Okay, once again. When a build is triggered, Jenkins loads Jenkinsfile from the repository, then it loads the MPL library and starts the MPLPipeline step with project configuration, which is processing and passing to the models in the defined stages. For example, checkout stage will check that configuration for the stage is set by the MPL model enabled function, and will run the MPL model step with defaults, that means model name is the stage name. So it will go to the models path and will find the checkout/checkout.groovy file with further logic definitions. This is the typical MPL model that uses CFG map and scripted logic to determine what needs to be done. It checks git.url config existing and runs git checkout or default checkout models with the same configuration CFG provided for the current model. In the same directory checkout, you can see the models I mentioned before. Default checkout.groovy. It contains only checkout SCM line suitable for the repositories with Jenkinsfile. And git checkout.groovy to be able to check out from the pipeline described in the Jenkins project configuration script. Okay, let's find some other model in the pipeline. Let it be build. So the MPL model will find build/build.groovy file, which contains run of the Maven build model with the current configuration and OpenShift build model if OpenShift file or folder exists. Let's check what's inside the Maven build model. It's just getting the Maven tool and running it with parameters to build and install the package. By the way, it's checking the configuration on the existing Maven setting path and adding it to the execution line. Okay, let's switch to our MPL project build and check what's happening in the console during execution. We have the Blue Ocean interface installed, so let's use it. Clicking on the successful build and we can see the stages and steps. Opening the build stage and we can see the steps we need. Maven free tool, it's unpacking Maven on the agent, and mvn command execution that can display the build console output. Let's open the complete log. As usual, any Maven build starts with getting dependencies. In the log we can see the compilation process to check there is no issues with syntax, and execution of example unit tests for the build model. Here are just 3 tests with a different input model configuration. These tests are run in mocked model logic and prints what's executed during the run. As we saw previously, it's just Maven build model with tool and shell command execution. No OpenShift build model started due to mocked file exist function returned false by default. Let's open pom.xml project file to see how the tests are executed. We can see a number of dependencies here contains classes we are using in MPL and during testing. To use the library in tests, we are storing current source code to MPL snapshots folder, compiling and running the tests by executing Maven Plus plugin. As a basic testing framework, we are using Jenkinsfile unit from less threads. Okay, let's check test classes itself. They are stored in test directory and contains models and testing folders. Test classes are stored in the models folder, some framework overrides in testing folder. Now we can see build test.groovy source that basically a groovy class contains the setup method and the number of test methods. The test consists of a setup, running the model with some configuration and checking the execution stack after that. Here we have 3 tests: default run, change tool and change settings. Those tests run in build model with different configuration and check that the parameters are in place and required things were called. For example, change settings test, checking that shell command will contain provided settings XML path argument for Maven. I think that's it for now. Thank you for participating, and I hope it was interesting.